back to a evening edition of the Ad Podcast. We've got one more exciting guest for you guys today. Matt Johnson is a founder and creative leader at Haymaker, where he works on building bold, insight-driven campaigns that help brands stand out in culture. With experience across strategy and creative development, Matt is known for turning sharp ideas into effective, modern marketing that connects with real audiences and drives business impact. I had a chance to sit down with one of his colleagues at Cannes last year and learn a little bit more about Haymaker. And my understanding is the Haymaker comes from, the 1-2 punch when you throw a haymaker, and you guys are punching above your weight class as a fast-growing, excited indie shop. So thanks for joining, Matt. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was a cool setup.
Let's go. So I gave, obviously, what you're doing now at Haymaker and this indie shop that you founded, but do you want to walk us through your background a little bit? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into the industry? And give us some of the notches in your belt as you climb the ladder and founded your own shop.
Sure. I grew up in a really small town in Northern California called Ukiah.
Oh, I've been to Ukiah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 15,000 people, maybe less.
Yeah. My one of my high school buddies had like a family friend that lived up there.
Okay.
And in the summer, they were, it was like one of those family friends where they, lived together as children and kind of grew up, but then lived in different areas. So
yeah,
we drove my 1967 red Ford Mustang from Santa Barbara up to Ukiah for a summer, and I just remember, I had never seen so much marijuana in my entire life.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's basically wine and weed, or as I like to call it, it's kind of like hippies and handguns. It's the extremes, but a really cool place to grow up. It's very much like the Wild West. It's still very wild and unpolished.
Yeah. And this was before marijuana was legal. So, like now that doesn't sound like a big deal, but back then it was a big deal.
Yeah. Back then, like when I was a kid, if you were going camping or hiking or something, it'd be like, well, don't go this way, don't go that way, don't go all the way up there. You want to steer clear of certain spots in and around the town. Yeah. This is a cool place to grow up though. But yeah, and then how I got into advertising, I went to the University of Oregon and I went up there thinking I was either going to be a sports broadcaster or a doctor. Wow. And the joke is that I took organic chemistry and I decided not to be a doctor.
Yeah,
I did well at other things.
A lot of school if organic chemistry didn't go well, right?
Yeah, I also had I played sports as a kid, and I went to an orthopedist when I was in high school because my knees were getting banged up pretty badly. And I asked him, I was like, oh, what's it like being a doctor? And he was like, oh, don't do it.
Wow.
He's like, you'll be in school forever. Don't do it. And I was like, okay, you're pretty impressionable when you're a kid. But I took a class called visual communications. And when I realized, I don't know why it ever didn't dawn on me. Obviously, like the internet wasn't around back then. We didn't have Instagram. But I always just imagined that the people that made commercials were kind of famous like the people that make movies. And I didn't realize that it was something that you could actually do. And I was in the heyday of Nike, right? So Charles Barkley, Get Off My Backboard, all the original Air Jordan stuff. Like that to me was pretty monumental when I was a kid playing sports and loving everything about sports. And then when you go to Oregon, you realize, oh, everybody that made all those commercials went to Oregon. Most of them did. So, you kind of quickly see it as a real opportunity, and I fell in love with it. So I studied it in school, and then my first job out of college was at Goodby Silverstein and Partners in San Francisco. And then it was as if college could get any better. It did. It was so much fun. And I remember just calling my dad all the time being like, I can't believe they pay me to do this. This is so much fun. I was having a blast. But yeah, and then, I left Goodby and went to an agency called Legis Delaney. They have a really big presence in Europe. They were building the West Coast operation for Adidas, and that was the first time that I got experience on the Adidas brand. It wouldn't be the last.
Uh-huh.
And I then went and the dot-com explosion happened and the bubble burst and I got laid off for the first time. It would be the last. And then I became the first employee at Venables Bell and Partners.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
Venables was, and Greg Bell and Bob Molyneux were all at Goodby when I was there. They were far more accomplished than I was, but yeah, I ended up being their first employee, and that was a pretty remarkable experience. And just seeing how like an agency was actually built, from the ground up. They're all three like really inspiring people. I learned a ton from them. Then I went back to another agency called Booter Engel and Friends, and that was two of the guys that I worked with at Legis that started their own thing. So again, I saw another small agency kind of start get its legs underneath it and start from whole cloth. And then I decided to go freelance and move to Los Angeles, and I bounced around and freelanced for I think around 5 years as a strategist, and ended up staying on after winning a new business pitch with 180 LA, and I helped
Uh-huh.
them. They had already opened the office, but I was pretty early there in terms of like as they were developing that. And then I left and thought maybe I'm going to get out of advertising.
Wow. Yeah,
And
you had had
yeah,
enough.
it was a lot. I'd had my first kid and I was like,
Mhm.
how do I do this? And I think I dabbled as like a creative person, but for the most part, there was still a lot of like old structures in place where, if you weren't a creative, you were not asked to do creative things. I luckily had a lot of leaders at those different agencies that gave me swings because they knew I was a pretty creative guy just from hanging out with me. I was doing a lot of voiceover work that was, on HBO, and was doing stand-up comedy and improv, and like they're like, yeah, this is a creative
Wow.
guy. This guy can do things. And then I took a freelance job at 72 and Sunny, and that like without being too dramatic, I'd say I was kind of reborn in the business there. It
Mm.
was competitive in a way that I loved because I played sports growing up as a kid. It was very much best idea wins, and they would listen to your idea. And I was just really inspired by the total number of people that I was surrounded by. Um, and that was like, oh, okay, well, if I can do it this way, then I think I could make a life out of this beyond the career that I had already had. And that's where I met my co-founder, Jay Cometh. And the way that we worked together was really fun, but also powerful. We were having a lot of success. We said, well, if we started our own agency, what if we just built it in the way that our relationship works, where creatives swim upstream into strategy, and strategy hangs on and contributes creatively. And that's how we started Haymaker.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. What a great
Yeah.
story, and a bunch of really cool stops along the way, and
Yeah.
we'll get into some of that. So first thing I have to ask you, what's better, San Francisco or LA?
Oh, it's tough. See, I was born and raised in Northern California, and I
Yeah.
love San Francisco. I can't tell you how many times you land at the airport and then you drive the 280 back into the city and you see that view and you're like, I cannot believe I live in this city. It's like one of the most beautiful cities on earth. Um, and then I moved to LA, and as a Northern California kid, you're like raised to hate LA. And
Mhm.
Southern California people are like, what? They're not really
they're not
bothered
even
by it. Or,
they're
yeah.
not really even thinking about it. Yeah.
No, and I came down and I'm like, oh, it's incredible down here. It is so much fun. All of the, stereotypes, none of that. You'd have to look for that, like fake people or whatever. You'd have to look for it. But I love it, especially since having kids.
Yeah.
It's everything that you want from like a major metropolitan area like a San Francisco, Chicago, New York. But it's also like it's not too far away from suburbia. It kind of burrows out like Manhattan, but I love them both. I'm still a diehard Giants and 49ers and Warriors fans. That doesn't really play well, down here. I can't wear my Giants hat to the Home Depot because nobody will help me. They kind of look at me like, oh, who is this punk? Which I respect. I respect it. I love the fact that they're passionate enough to like not want to help me, but yeah, it's cool. So yeah, still a Giants fan, but love LA. I'm married to a native Angelino, and my kids are being raised as Angelinos. So
I love it.
yeah,
I love it. Well,
yeah.
I pulled the parrot on LA 10 years ago,
Okay.
but lived in LA for 10 years. And I was from Central California. I was from Santa Barbara, so
Oh, okay,
I
cool.
can't really
Yeah.
claim NorCal, but get to come to LA almost every week, and going back to San Francisco more recently, going up there for the Super Bowl for some activations and
Oh,
covered a
cool.
few stories. And as much as bad press San Francisco's got, in recent times, man, it is still just such a great, fun city to go to. I think social media and politics have unfortunately painted a totally inaccurate picture.
Yeah.
And look at all the cool things that are happening in San Francisco. You got World Cup, you got the Super Bowl, you got just all this really cool stuff happening all in a really short period of time. So love San
Yeah.
Francisco too.
Same.
Awesome, man. Hey, I wanted to stop on the stand-up comedy thing because
Mm-hmm.
it's been something that I've actually interviewed two agencies recently that basically use stand-up comedy and comedians and experiences in stand-up as kind of their core offering is like, how do you translate comedy to advertising and do it in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
authentic and funny and doesn't come off cheesy. So I'm curious, as a creative, what does being a stand-up, practicing stand-up, and
Mm-hmm.
working that muscle, what does that do for you creatively?
Yeah, I haven't done it in a while. I still think in bits, but for me, again, I took a stand-up class in San Francisco, and it was literally like right after 9/11. I didn't
Mm,
sign up for it after 9/11. I had it planned. 9/11 happened, and then I went in, and it was like, I guess we're still gonna do the class, and I you could feel it was really therapeutic for people. But for me, it's very much like baptism by fire. So the thing I like to say at agencies, obviously, like so much of our business is driven by empathy. You have to have empathy for the consumer, what the situation that they're in, whether it's financial, cultural, regional, like depending upon gender specific, like you really got to have a really strong empathy muscle. And I think the same is true for the dynamics within the agency. So
mm,
I think one of the things that I really loved as being a strategist was I had a lot of empathy for creative people because I'd been creative in my own life. And so, not to sound un-PC or anything, but I think creative people get naked at work every day.
mm,
They bare their souls with their ideas, and there's a lot of interactions for criticism. And
mm.
so stand up is perfect for that because you are very much naked when you're on stage. If you bomb, it is rough, but it's also something that the more that you do it, and by that I mean bomb,
Yep.
the better you get. And it's true about, I think, creative too. The less you are worried about the outcome and the more you are passionate and invested in the output, then you'll be okay. And part of my job, I think, as an agency leader now is to like create an environment where people feel like it's okay to swing big and miss. It's okay to take a chance. Maybe your seniority doesn't say that you should be the one with the idea, but Jay and I kind of don't really believe in any of that stuff. And so part of what stand up does is it forces you to get naked. And
Mm,
the more that you are kind of naked with your ideas, the better chance the idea has a shot. You are going to learn something. The agency, if it's run by the right people, will foster those ideas. And I think you line up for success. If you have a culture of people being really afraid to put an idea out into the world or out into the table in the small room that you're in, you're doomed. You will not crack, you won't crack the problem, and you also won't break through any of the noise. So people have to feel really comfortable. And so improv, I think, is incredible just for life in that it teaches you to do active listening and think fast on your feet and have an answer, even if it's not the right answer. But moving forward with the contribution and letting it kind of give life to an idea. And stand up is like get over your fear and just put it out there and see what happens. So both those elements of comedy, I think, are not only good for the advertising business, but they're good for life. So
No,
yeah.
well, well, thank you for that. One of the reasons I'm very interested in is I just signed up for a stand up comedy class
Oh, cool.
in the stand up comedy. I think it's like Second City or something
Oh yeah, yeah,
here in San Diego and La Jolla. And really, my only goal is to like learn and get on stage and do advertising and sales jokes so I can put them on my LinkedIn.
oh, there you go.
But I think, it'll hopefully, like, it sounds like I'm going to have a lot more benefit of just like going through that learning process and trying. And fearlessness is not something that I spend a lot of time agonizing over, but I think I've seen people up there before who are kind of trying it at open mics, and man, you feel for them. Like it's almost
Yeah,
like your skin crawls because you feel so bad for them when things aren't going well.
yeah, totally. It is rough when you're in a room and someone's not doing well. I also think it's telling about the audience. Sometimes there are people that are like, oh yeah, let's pile on this guy, and then there are other people that are like, I kind of want to save this person.
Mm, yeah.
um, but it's a great thing to experience. I look at it like, hey, if you have the time and you can train for a marathon, you should do it because you want to see like what
Mm,
your body can do. If you've got the guts and you want to try stand up, you should do it because it's really a test that you can't really fail. You're not in any real danger, but boy, does it feel good to get out of your comfort zone. And when you land, you can have a little bit of success, and it's electric. You can see it's
wow.
very addicting. So yeah, super fun.
Yeah.
Have fun with
That's
it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I wanted to hearken a little bit to your, kind of like passions being reignited at 72.
Hmm.
I had the pleasure of doing 3 takeovers of Sport Beach at Cannes
Oh
this
yeah.
last
Hmm.
year, and I got to interview Matt, the chief creative officer of 72.
Hmm. Murphy.
And yep, yeah, I
Yeah.
got to interview Murphy, and what a humble dude, but like such a
Hmm.
legend, and
Yeah.
like again, like that great energy. But yeah, he was very, very much reinforced what you said is that it's a team sport, and they consider like great ideas can come from anywhere, and
Hmm.
it's not about the individual, it's about the idea, it's about the work, and whether it's an intern to the chief creative officer, like everything's on
Yeah.
the table. So I love that you bring that sensibility to Haymaker as well. So Haymaker has built a reputation for culturally relevant work.
Hmm.
What do you think relevance means in the current moment?
I think the idea of culture as this large monolith is dead. I think the internet,
Mm,
and now especially social, microcultures are the new culture, which as a I'll just pick one of my interests. I'll say a home improvement nerd. I watch endless content on guys that are just text like doing, sheetrock. And I'll watch them and I'm like, that guy is an artist. Look at this guy or gal, do it. Like, holy, they're unbelievable. The amount of like skill that goes into that. And I think what it's really does is it's like, I think as opposed to people feeling like they either fit in or don't fit in with culture, there's now a space for everyone to fit in and for everyone's kind of inner nerd to come alive. And it doesn't have to be nerdy things, it could be anything, really. There's a lot of positives, obviously, to that, but there's also a lot of negatives to that. And that I think, folks that maybe were a little bit squashed for the right reasons have now had a voice too. So you kind of got to, you realize that, in addition to like, all of the other folks that are lent a voice. There's the positives and the negatives of it. But from an advertising perspective, I think starting on like a monoculture is like a lost cause. We are
mm,
always looking for like, well, what's the micro culture? What's the smaller audience? There's a lot of things that do bleed over into kind of the total population, if we were to look at it that way. But it's really like passion and fandom. A lot of what we do, I would say, like, yes, culturally relevant work, but we're really activating fans, through
Mm.
brand acts.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that. It reminds me a little bit of, the idea of, if you can go viral, I hate that word, but, sometimes
mhm,
it works. If you can go viral in a smaller segment,
mhm,
and if that segment is a tastemaker or can bleed over into these larger, if you expand the bullseye into these additional circles, I feel like the greatest example of all time was Mark Zuckerberg going viral and getting the entire population of Harvard on Facebook.
mm,
And then he strategically went after the other Ivies because Ivies
mhm,
had an influence on college kids. And then he strategically then got all of the college kids at the cool schools, and then eventually it was just college kids. And
mhm,
I remember being so wanting to get on Facebook that I was a recent graduate. I was like 1 or 2 years out of school.
mhm.
I literally called my university and was like, "Can you turn my old email back on so I can log in and get a Facebook account?" And I can't
Yeah,
remember if
yeah.
I was able to pull that or up, but that's the lengths, that I would go to access this, exclusive group of people and this exclusive group of young people doing something cool online.
Mhm.
I feel like you can do that kind of in culture too. Like if you identify that micro community and you go viral within that community, it kind of leads itself to the next affinity group too.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most successful brands, you're seeing them. There's a couple different postures that brands have. They'll either chase the virality, right? And they're the ones that are like jumping on the latest trend. So I haven't looked on social today, been pretty busy, but I'm going to guess there are some brands doing some stuff around the year 2016 because it's kind of having a moment.
Hmm.
That's chasing it. But there are other brands, and I think the most successful brands are the ones that plant their flag very firmly in a micro culture. And then eventually it becomes so interesting that they catapult outside of it. I think Yeti
Mm.
is the perfect example of that.
Mm.
It wasn't really like cooler culture, it was outdoor adventure, right? Or like experiences. Everything from, of course, fishing. I think the two founders were way into fishing, and don't quote me on that, but from articles that I've read. But then it grew into, like, I remember I'm a baseball guy and I watched like a kind of a mini documentary on like a hardball league, I think in Texas. And it was all brought to you by Yeti. And I'm like, cool. Like they're into that. And they're just little drops of they're showing an authentic look at a microculture. It lends authenticity to them. They're going really deep on something. Oh, they must think that much about their own product. They're winning fans. Like I probably could be a fan of theirs. And that's like how I think brands are doing it. And they're not doing it through performance marketing necessarily. It's not like that's a bad thing, but it's done through acts, and it's done through experiential, and it's done through really intentional comms. They've now catapulted to a level where you're seeing, I think Wyden just did a national campaign for them. They wouldn't have
Mm.
done that 10 years ago or 7 years ago, right? They still would have been in that arc, but they've been really patient. And I think now, obviously, they're really well known. But that ad that Wyden did, and again, a lot of it's due to the credit of Wyden and Kennedy, but I think when I saw that, I was like, oh, Yeti earned that ad. They earned that
Mm.
national ad. It's not like, oh, they sold out or now they're a different company. You can see some brands go too fast, right? If they started in a micro community and then they all of a sudden get really popular, their fans might not like it because they went too fast. But Yeti is a brand that I feel like strategically is has really nailed that micro community and authenticity strategy, and then now is on a national stage doing it. They don't really feel, you can still watch the old baseball documentary that I watched and that new ad, and you're like, yeah, it's the same brand, but they're 8 years apart and probably billions of dollars in sold goods. But yeah, that to me is like, oh, that's the secret sauce. The hard part is that marketing, I think, and people, I feel for clients, there's so much turnover at clients and there's such a threat that they're going to lose their job, that a plan like that, it's like, well, how am I going to enact that plan? I don't have the time for that. I don't have the patience for that. I might not have the half-life at this company to see that through. So as agencies, we're asked to accelerate a lot, but I think when you look at the brands that have been really successful, they've built something over time, and it's an investment, not just a return on ad spend. So.
I like that. And I think the other thing that you mentioned is, you watched a documentary brought to you by Yeti. You didn't watch an ad by Yeti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, we're coming up on Sundance this week,
Mm-hmm.
and the Brand Storytelling Festival at the end of Sundance that showcases the best and the brightest in the world of brand funded television and
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking. You know, anytime I open my Instagram, it's a surfing video, and half of them
Mm-hmm.
are brought to me by Red Bull.
Uh-huh.
There are brands that have just built this tremendous publishing arm where they invest more in content versus things that are going to interrupt content.
Mm-hmm.
How much are you guys thinking about brand storytelling as the way to reach the modern consumer when there's so many opportunities to opt out of interruptive advertising?
Yeah, I think storytelling has always been a part of what we're trying to do. I think, if anything, if I go all the way back to my start in the 90s, the late 90s, Goodby had media in house. And so when you looked at where the message was and how it was consumed, in addition to what the message was, it was a really powerful combination. We have like strategic alliances with media partners where we're able to do that. But when you don't have that and they're fragmented, it's kind of it's difficult. It all of a sudden becomes a tactical exercise, but you know, just by design, they're not always linked up. I think the best brand stories that we see, the creative agency and the media agency, which is also a creative entity in my opinion, are holding hands and pushing that forward. We did a little bit of that with Powerade back in the day. But yeah, we're storytellers first and foremost. I just think the world of opportunities are even greater now for advertising folks that know how to tell brand stories. The opposite end of that effect is Hollywood getting into the brand story game. That
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't always work either, because they're wanting to apply the same rules as like Hollywood has had. And I feel like at the end of the day, the brand is the one that loses out in that moment. Like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
one-off. There's too much ephemera. It's gone. There's no long-term thinking or strategy applied to that. So for me, the pressure that's been put on studios, especially being in Los Angeles, you see it. A lot of celebrities are turning to brands because brands have money, and it seems like the studios are not greenlighting projects. But I think that like the merger of advertising and entertainment, it's really ripe at this moment. The best ads have always all done that. Like, advertising's always kind of been the stepchild of Hollywood, but we have been telling the best advertising breaks through just like a great movie does, and movies are selling the same that as ads are. I think like there's just a little bit more of we're graying kind of those hard and fast lines that exist between the two, which for me is really exciting, having always been someone in advertising that's trying to entertain first. I've been a part of a lot of creative boutique shops throughout my career. I've never really been at one that does it more for the meal than the real. It's all kind of like,
Mm,
well, how do we do it? How do we do the best of our ability, no matter who the brand is? So,
love
yeah,
it.
I think it's cool. It's exciting time.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially when you see, some of these projects like Drive to Survive for
Mm-hmm.
F1, or the golf show that was on Netflix, or,
Mm-hmm.
I spent my whole ski vacation in the evening watching this like farm to table show from
Mm-hmm.
this snowboard, this, ex snowboard pro that would travel around the world and like source ingredients from local farms and then bring them back to a chef. And it was brought to you by like some direct consumer clothes company. Now, the problem with
Hmm.
that is I don't remember what brand sponsored it. So there wasn't enough of a tie in, but the
Yeah.
content was really good, but I can't think of the name of the brand for the life of me right now. So,
Yeah.
that might be a good question. So, in brand funded content, how does a brand make sure that they don't miss the connection that I'm losing? Like, yes, entertainment is important and it's great to get the consumer to watch something, but
Hmm.
if they don't remember who the sponsor is, then what was the value? Or
Yeah.
how do you make it more memorable so that attribution is there?
I think there are some heavy influences, and I'll just give you kind of my philosophy. But in advertising, we used to talk about ROI, return on investment, all the time. Brands and all of the folks that worked at brands and agency folks knew that there wasn't one ad that was going to change the trajectory of your brand. It was the investment, not even over a long term, but an investment. How does each step that you make and the strategy apply over the long term?
Mm.
With the digital explosion and social explosion, and I would even argue like private equity, what you're seeing is now the conversation is all about return on ad spend. I go into the ad grocery store, I buy an ad, what do I pay for it and what do I get? And it's
Mm.
like it's we've forgotten that it's a bit of the art plus the science. And so you'll see brands that will just struggle in perpetuity because they're only about the science. They're only about the numbers, and they feel like, well, we're getting this great return out of this performance marketing, and it does help at a certain point in the funnel, but ultimately it becomes so saturated that people don't remember, like, well, what's the brand's difference? You've gotten me to click a few times and maybe convert a few times, but I'm not really left with any residual impact of the brand's efforts, and that's where the investment is. So the brands that invest are the brands that are winning, and I don't mean big money, I mean investing in a very clear strategy over time and not wavering and not assuming that one ad is going to get it done. In social, we hear a lot about, well, this one ad changed the trajectory. It does. Look at Stanley Cups. I don't know. There's like they had this huge spike, but I don't know where the brand is today. I know that they're no
Mm.
longer popular in my house. They were popular for about a month,
Yeah. Now
and
it's
then
now it's Uwala, right? Is the
yeah,
new
or
is
whatever it
the
might
yeah.
be. So it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you can burn really hot that way. How a brand doesn't get lost is that they take the view of an investment. And I think in agency, it's our responsibility to coach and to help our partners understand that, yes, okay, there's this one piece, but what's the world that's surrounding the piece of content? How do we ensure that more and more people are exposed to it or brought to it or have, an option to kind of chase even more after seeing it? That's a lot. Like you'll see when we're approaching the Super Bowl, you'll see all that conversation happen around the Super Bowl. I think you have to look at branded entertainment kind of like the Super Bowl, in that there has to be a life apart from the 60-second Super Bowl spot. There has to be this world building that we've created around that spot in order for a brand to really see their investment, pay off. But brands that chase the one and done, they're like, great, we're going to saddle up with this celebrity. We're going to be on this platform. We're going to spend this money and it's going to be great. It's like, that's not how it works.
That's
You
funny.
gotta put some investment and time into it. It could work, but even that star burns pretty hot. If you look at very successful, strong brands, they've even like look at the Gap. Um, they've had a resurgence lately, but what they're doing is what worked for them. I want to say like back in the 90s or the 2000s. It's like they're investing in what the brand invested in years ago with modern makers, celebrities, influencers, whatever the mix might be, and it's paying off again because it's an additional investment from the brand in this space that they have a little bit of a foothold in. Brands that ping pong around a lot, they might have like a couple, hits, but the long term, it will be far tougher to maintain than, someone that finds a strategic foothold and invests in it.
Yeah, I think I loved your example about the Super Bowl. It's not just a media buy, it's really a cultural moment.
Mhm.
And the companies that do get the most ROI out of that buy are the ones that create a campaign that can be leveraged. Like I swear I saw Walter Goggins goggle glasses
Yeah,
on you. I saw that ad yesterday on YouTube, and the next Super Bowl is in 2 weeks. Like
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if GoDaddy is using that ad after the Super Bowl still,
Mhm.
because I don't know. I mean, it just seems to be they're getting a lot of legs out of it. So,
Yeah.
um, have you worked on Super Bowl campaigns?
Yeah, yeah, we've done a couple as Haymaker, and I've worked on some in the past, but we did one most recently for Pluto TV, where we basically made the strategic argument like, hey, when you have the quality and the level of content that Pluto TV has, being a couch potato is actually the optimal state, not something that you would look to shy away from. So we built this huge potato farm where these couch potatoes are raised on the finest content from Pluto TV. But when we pitched it, we knew that like the costumes themselves and the characters, they're just TV fans in these potato costumes. But we knew that while we built this ranch and this farm and the potato costumes, we were world building. And that campaign, the potatoes ran for another full year after the Super Bowl. So, yes, big investment in terms of the money that was spent. It's a little bit different for them because it was on CBS that year and they're owned by Paramount. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
there's
There
some
was
shared.
there was a little bit of in kind, as they say, right?
Yeah, they still spent a lot of money on the work and a lot of money on the costumes, but like we were able to get a much longer tail. But that was the intention of that idea when we brought it to them. We're like, here's why we like it. It's not only going to be great and fun on the Super Bowl, but you can have a world exist far beyond the Super Bowl that stretch to events and different programming and you name it. So,
All right, so it wouldn't be a marketing podcast if we didn't at least say the word AI.
mhm.
I've avoided it for 37 minutes, but this is the year that I'm asking marketers to talk about the practicality of AI.
Mhm.
I feel like last year was kind of the hype cycle, and now it's like, okay, let's talk about how AI is being implemented and where it's actually unlocking things in the agency world. So, if you could point to one thing that AI is doing for you as a creative agency, where is it most practically applicable?
I would say that it's saving on some really mundane tasks that used to eat up a lot of our junior people's time.
Hmm.
And the Super Bowl ad, I will say, as like that Pluto ad that I mentioned, when we were doing comps, instead of having a junior person spend 100% of their day like comping as we're in a sprint to make this pitch, we did a lot of the comps like with AI. And the junior people then were able to spend time concepting. And it wasn't the exact idea, but one of the ideas that the potato idea came from a junior person.
Hmm.
So if that person had been in comp land in front of their monitor and not had any time to concept, I don't know if it would have landed in the table where we were reviewing all the ideas. It got shaped by everyone that was in the room and then obviously presented. So in that regard, like taking out some of the mundane stuff is really powerful. I would say it's also helpful in terms of like quick education. So what we deal with a lot in advertising is the biggest constraint is time. It's
Hmm.
speed. It's just the faster, better, cheaper. There's that old adage: faster, better, cheaper. Choose two.
Hmm.
And I'm like, not in advertising. It's like you got to deliver all of those all the time. And then next month it's faster, better, cheaper. That's why it's such a
Again.
tough business. Yeah, but AI helps you go really fast in many of those methods. Oop, did
Oh.
I lose you?
Looks like we got a little flash, but we're good. Keep going.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so AI helps you in those methods. I would say, like, personally, I use it as a bit of a sounding board. I'll like riff with it. And again, it doesn't really give me anything that's, I would say, like ready for print, but it helps me get rid of, I would say, ideas or false starts.
Mm.
And like it might give me um, a nugget. Like I look at it like if I'm in a room full of people at all different experiences, part of my job as one of the leaders of the company and also as like the quote unquote old guy is to hopefully have a sense of like what has possibility and then help those people find like what's possible in their idea. By that I mean like, oh, you said that one line in your setup, but I think that could be your entire platform. What would happen if you were to take that one line and turn it into a platform? I feel like any inputs that I get from AI are like that. They're
Mm.
unpolished, unrefined, but they might spark something in my mind that I'm able to then apply arguably more of the art as opposed to the science. I just saw a thing on Twitter. It was like Ben Affleck talking about AI, and I thought, again, I'll give kudos where kudos are due. He had a really interesting thought, which was like, AI is like the engine that keeps going, but the art is knowing when to stop. And I
Mm.
think that like there's still a really huge component of it that doesn't do well. It's going to put an obscene amount of pressure on people in terms of speed and price and cost. But the internet did that. I imagine a lot of other technologies did that. I look at it like just try to stay as fluent as possible. I don't have any objections to using it. Obviously, there's sensitivities, like we don't just put anything into it because you don't really know where it's going. So we won't, we'll be really sensitive with client information. But as far as having a conversation, I have a lot of those conversations, and it helps with a lot of mundane stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point on the kind of like data sourcing of it all, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I was on with an agency leader the other day, and he's like, "Oh, you got to try this new networking tool. It'll help you find CMOs to interview." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I log on. First thing it says, "Oh, connect your address book and give us every contact in your Rolodex." Okay.
Yeah.
Now download your CSV from LinkedIn and upload that here too. And then you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like starts giving me names of people, not really good. Says it can
Mm-hmm.
agentically reach out to these people. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, dude, I just gave this thing every contact in my entire world, for
Yeah.
no charge, for free, just gave it all this data. So I think you're right. Like, I think especially a lot of these front ends that are kind of like reskinned LLMs, got to be
Yeah.
careful what you give it because there's
Yeah.
no fine print saying that they can't take that data and do whatever they want with it.
Yeah. 100%. So, I mean, data is the modern gold. Like every time you like something on Instagram, you're giving something away for free, you know? And so none of them would exist. I think it's also a challenge that I have with a lot of social results. I'm like, okay, so yes, you're getting a lot of likes or a lot of engagement, but how many of those people are actually converting or doing something more? And again, you can get that information out there, but I think sometimes it's about like avoiding the distractions and really focusing on like, well, what what is the residual impact and what is the actual effect of the work that you're doing. But I think it's not going anywhere. I think just like the internet, I think it'll eventually like it will become a very useful tool in one aspect. I would say like what's really interesting though is I love the way that it aggregates all of the knowledge that's on the internet. It's a lot faster. Like I don't really search anymore in the traditional sense. Almost all of my searches are actual human language and into AI, not a few words into a Google search window, like a Chrome browser window. That almost
Yeah.
all go into AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it's cut out a lot of that, clicking through the websites and doing your
Hmm.
own research, and then you get cookied and followed around by that website. So
Hmm.
it's taking the whole consideration path out of the journey. I think I read somewhere the other day where 60% of searches on Google no longer end with a click. So people are just
Hmm.
they're just reading the Gemini results. But
Hmm.
what some e-commerce folks or folks that transact on their website, whether it's B2B or B2C, they say, man, once that traffic hits your website, it's ready to buy. So you
Hmm.
kind of have to change your user experience from being like nurturing a sales process, giving people information, reviews, videos, to like, nope, when they get there, give them the offer and give them what they want. You don't need a No more foreplay is required on the website.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have all of the information and it's like a consultative sales experience, right? You used to go into Best Buy and there'd be a guy or girl there telling you all about the different TVs. Well, now you get all of that at home from AI explained to you in English where you're not having to read multiple articles. And then you're like, well, that's the one that I want. And then you go and find it. So I've used
Mhm.
it for all kinds of weird things that are aggregation of data and information, but not a lot of like artistic things, I would say, apart from like generating images for comps.
Yeah, more for the research and kind of the storyboarding process and just speeding up that, kind of creative concepting phase.
Yeah, totally. Just like give me the most information I can learn about a company in the shortest amount of time. And that you used to, we used to call them get smarts. It'd be like someone would work on one of those for like a week. Now it happens in 15 minutes,
Crazy.
pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very optimistic point of view from a creative agency professional. I know there's a lot of doomsdayers out there and a lot of people that think it's going to take all our jobs. And I think to some degree, there might be moments of that. But I love the idea that you said, this isn't replacing a junior person, it's making a junior person do their job better and faster. So
Yeah.
that's optimistic as well. Well, Matt, great conversation, man. I have admired talking to anybody and everybody I can get my hands on from your shop. So thank
Oh,
you
thanks, man.
for yeah, of course. So I'll look forward to continuing to watch what you guys do and to tune in. So if folks want to learn more about your agency or connect with you directly, where would you like to send the audience?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out all of our work on our website, which is hymkr.co. And keep your eyes peeled. We just opened a New York office. I think it was in September. Won a Small Agency of the Year award in 25. So we've got a little bit of momentum going into 26. Excited about all the prospects there. And Dylan, I just really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been cool.
Yeah, anytime, man. Well, appreciate you as always. And for those of you who are watching at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a subscribe or a follow. If you're listening to the show, an honest review on whatever platform that you happen to be listening on is how we find a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if there's a creative out there somewhere, some brand marketer who you think would enjoy the conversation that I had with Matt, or just somebody who you think would enjoy the show, don't forget to share. And with that, I will wish you a good evening, Matt. Hopefully, I'll see you around soon. Okay.